Welcome to episode 2 of the SOCIALpreneur podcast. I am your host, Allison, also known as blogger, influencer, Absolutely Allie, serial entrepreneur with Absolutely Social, and many other things. I hope you enjoyed episode 1, learning about what this podcast is about, which pretty much is about anybody that is a socialpreneur, entrepreneur that uses social media or digital marketing in order to build their business or to build their brand. So like I said, I'm going to have guests on here. We have our first guest today, which is Debra Locker from the Locker Group. And I'll have her introduce herself in a second. But I just want to let you all know, please like and please share the podcast, and please let me know other guests that you want on here, and also what other tips and tricks you all would like to know about social media, about being a social entrepreneur. I know there are many people out there. I would love to interview people to give you all what you need in order to build your brand and your business. That's why I definitely thought of Debra to be our first guest, because she's worked in the field of PR and marketing for a long time. And I know that she has the ins and outs, and she knows a lot about PR. And I know there's many people that are interested to know how you work with a PR agency, or what exactly PR is, and how you can work with her or anybody else in that field. So Debra, what I'm going to do, I was going to have you introduce yourself. Let us know how you got started in this industry, and what do you see as some of the trends as far as PR?
Thank you. Those are great questions. And thank you for having me on, Allie. Congrats on your new podcast. We've known each other for years now, and I think everything you do is great. So congratulations. My background is actually in journalism. So after graduating from college, I was a television journalist for 7 years. So I started actually in Lexington, Kentucky. And then I worked in Knoxville, Tennessee. Oh, wow. And then my first time in Louisville, which I'm here now. And then I worked in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was a reporter, and I was also a producer. And it was a wonderful, fun career for that time of my life, when I was young and childless and not married the whole time. So, but while being a very cool career, the hours are very draining. And the pay is not great until you've been in it for a long time. So I started moving out of it, and I always thought that I would love to do PR because I love to write and I love to tell stories, which is what I did as a journalist. So it was a natural progression into doing PR. And a lot of journalists actually do become PR people as well. So I was fortunate to be able to get a job that brought my husband and I back to Kentucky, which we are both Kentucky natives. And I worked for a company in Lexington called Host Communications. That company was later acquired by IMG, which is a sports marketing company. And so I did corporate PR there. And then I worked for one of the associations, which was called the International Spa Association, which was wonderful. So the members are people who own spas and run spas and that sort of thing. So I was able to do a lot of really amazing travel and meet a lot of incredible people. And we had a media event in New York every year. And I was able to do a lot of things that PR people dream of getting to do, because there was a budget behind me. And there was an international presence too, which is just super cool. So I was there for 7 years. I learned a ton. I had my son in 2006. And at that time, I started trying to figure out, this is my exit plan. I want to be my own boss. And I come from an entrepreneurial family. So I was very accustomed to the lifestyle of someone owning their own business, being that they work all the time, but they also have incredible flexibility. And that's what I wanted. So it took me about 2 years. Then I launched my firm in 2008, and we launched in Lexington. Now we live in Louisville, but I've had my firm for 12 years, which is really momentous. Actually, I feel PR has changed a ton in that time. When I started my firm, social media was new, and not everyone knew how to do it. Influencers were brand new. all that was new. So I've had to learn that along with everyone else and along with my clients, and depend on people like you, Allie, to help me learn it. Because I'm definitely not going to say that I'm an expert in it. That's why people like you are around. And as far as trends in PR, and this has been a challenging year for everyone. I mean, we all know that. So I've had to get better at telling my clients' stories. They've had to get better at telling their own stories. So I feel like storytelling is never going to go away, either in print or video, podcasts, that sort of thing. So that one's going to last. Social, I do feel, will continue to be more important in PR. There are a lot of opportunities to do paid placements now that did not always exist. So this is not just a typical ad in a magazine. Obviously those still exist, but this is to, maybe pay to be on a morning show in your local city, or to do that magazine ad, but it doesn't look like an ad. It looks like a story. So I'm going to be honest, I don't typically really support that for my clients. I think that there's more creative ways to get their stories out. However, certainly that is one of the ways that people can get their stories out, and they don't even need a PR person to do that, actually. But that, I don't think that that's going to go away, because as we all know, readership, is definitely down for print magazines, print newspapers, everything's going online. So with that, there's just more opportunities for that sort of thing. But yeah, telling a good story is never going to go away.
Okay, that is awesome. I feel like there is so much in PR that many of us don't really know about. And that's why I wanted you to kind of talk about like the difference in PR then and now, and how people can use a PR person in order to get their name and their brand out there. But one question I really have, I know you have worked with influencers. So in what ways has PR helped influencers, or vice versa? In what ways have you worked with influencers through your business?
That's a great question. I do a lot with influencers locally. So for my clients in Kentucky, and luckily we have a really great group of influencers in Kentucky, yourself included, JC Phelps. There's some really good ones here. And I have been able to work with you guys a couple of different ways. Openings are always wonderful to have, just like a special event for influencers, or it can be a breakfast or that sort of thing. But I love to have events that are catered to influencers, to really get them out and to help you spread that word in the beginning, because they will all take pictures. They will all do the tagging. They'll all take pictures together too, and singly. And you can not only have those pictures and use them for your social, but they're going to use them on all their stuff. And some of the influencers and stuff, whenever they start out and they're not charging yet, which I completely believe in paying influencers, but you can also do things with them maybe in trade. I have a wonderful client, Spots Gelato, which is a Kentucky-based brand, and they have 3 locations now, and they've always worked with influencers, and the owner really gets that, and I always supported it for her. But we always had an opening event for influencers, and we always will do promotions that are with influencers, like giveaways, contests, that sort of thing. Those all totally work. I have another client in Kentucky, Shelby County Tourism, and they're a wonderful group, and we have done 2, they're called FAM trips, which is just familiarity trip. It's a fancy word for a trip, but we've had influencers come on different media trips. And Allie, you came on one back in August, and your friend Courtney, who's wonderful. And then we had Abby Lobb, who is a writer for several publications in Kentucky. And we got really great stuff out of that. So not only were you guys doing stories and posts while you were there, but then you did follow-up stuff as well. So I find it to be a really great relationship to have. And not only do you guys really help my clients, but I also have developed friendships with you, which is also super important.
I feel like influencers and PR are meant to be. Like, I think it's such a great relationship. I love how that we can all work together for the common good to make things, work for obviously our benefit and get the name out there. But one question I wanted to ask is, I know before influencers were around, doing marketing and PR obviously was different. It's like you would work with boutiques, and I know you like Spots Gelato. How do you feel that has changed from before? So I want people, not only like influencers and bloggers, to, you know, listen to this podcast and get stuff out of it, but I also want like the boutique owner, the doctor's office, and whoever to get information out of this. So how can PR help them, and how has it changed?
Another great question. Yeah, I work with a lot of boutiques. I mainly do work with small businesses, which is how I arranged my business to be. I love telling the stories of small businesses and have a real appreciation for what it takes to run a small business. So you're not going to see me representing big corporations. It's just not me. So again, with boutique sort of businesses, they really need to connect with their community. So again, I have a lot of clients in Louisville, a lot of clients in Lexington. For those guys, I only do Kentucky stuff unless they want national. And and it also has to be a brand that can be represented nationally. Not everyone is going to have an interest nationally. Now, back to Shelby County Tourism, that part of Kentucky really has, their business has been booming for a couple of years, and they have really great stats to back that up. So they can tell a national story about tourism and travel. And they've actually held really well during COVID, which is an amazing story to tell. So I have been able to get national stuff for them, but that doesn't always happen for your local businesses. But those guys just really, they need to connect with their community. So even without a PR person, they need to have events. They need to have, again, get to know the influencers. They need to have fun little charity things that they do. I'm a huge supporter of charities. And so, you know, it would be great for them to find a couple of charities in their area that they really believe in and that they can support, and, you know, do charity days and charity events and that sort of thing. It's just really important that they know everyone, which is not the easiest to do, but I really encourage all my clients to serve on boards and committees, you know, join the chamber, join the junior league, all those things, because it does take time. Absolutely. However, every time I've ever done something like that, it's always come back to me in business.
Right. So I recently saw that you did, like, I don't know if it was, I think it was a virtual class on PR. I think it was with Level Up Blue.
Yeah.
You can talk a little bit about that, but also for the people that are on like either a shoestring budget or, you know, that are just starting out and have this grand plan, but they don't have the money. How can they either get good PR? Is it good for people to do their own PR? Talk about a little bit about that.
Great question. And that is something, yes, that I do classes on. You can absolutely do your own. And I mean, I'm not going to tell you to always do that because people like me wouldn't have a job, but sometimes it's really good if you start out doing some of your own, because then you understand how hard it is, but then you also understand, hey, this is what this person's going to be doing for me. And wow, when they're doing all this, I'm going to have so much more time to manage my business. Actually, I was talking with Nikki at Belmonte about that, because she's so in the weeds right now with her business. And I think she'd be okay with me saying that, but she doesn't really have time for the marketing and the PR. She does a lot with influencers, of course, right? But she's just so into the weeds that she can't think broadly. And that's whenever you bring in that PR person, that's what they do for you. And so you will realize that you then have all this time to be the CEO that you've wanted to be, and that you're not bogged down with writing press releases or organizing photo shoots or organizing events or trying to think of things that are newsworthy. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that you can do yourself. And I like to tell people that you are really your own best PR person. And that's for everybody. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. You have a brand and you have a story. So obviously when you own a business, you definitely have to be your PR person, but you know, you could be an attorney, a doctor, whatever. You have that story to tell, and that is your brand. A lot of that is conveyed over social, as you know, and social is a great, great, great way to PR yourself. Obviously, you know more about social than I do, but I have my personal accounts and then I have my business accounts, and I put very different things on them. And it's rare for me to let them cross populate. And I think that works for everybody. I mean, again, maybe you own a really great hair salon, and maybe you do treatments and styles that no one else in your city does. Well, make sure that you have not only your personal pages, but that you also have pages for your business and your salon and that sort of thing, and talk about those things that are unique to you. Again, that's free unless you're boosting it or unless you're paying someone to do it. But, in the beginning, I do urge people to try it themselves for a little while to understand the nuances. And then I absolutely do think that as you get bigger, social, you absolutely should pay someone to do, just like you should pay someone to do your PR. Writing is something that I do a ton of. And a lot of students, when I speak to them, college students, they really don't think of the writing part of PR. In my opinion, the writing part is more important than any other part of PR. You have to be able to write not only press releases and stories, but you have to be able to write a compelling email pitch, and say please and thank you and make things timely. And I feel that that's important for every business, but it's really so important for PR. So again, you don't have to have a PR person to be able to write. So, if you're writing content for your blog, share that on your social, maybe send it in your newsletter, maybe use it as a press release. Once you write something, you can use it in so many ways. So while it may take you a while to sit down and write something, there's so many ways that you can use it. And I tell people to create like an editorial calendar and look at 3 months ahead. So obviously right now we have Christmas, so you should be talking about holidays, and you really should have started talking about that about 3 months ago. But you have New Year, New You. That's always good. Valentine's Day, those great specials for couples. And you have St. Patrick's Day. Then you're going to go into spring. So with, like a fashion boutique, obviously they work really far in advance on ordering their stuff. So they're going to know what they're going to have. So I always like to put together pitches per month. And again, put it about 3 to 6 months in advance. Again, something that someone can do for themselves, but it takes the time to sit down and actually do it.
My husband always says that you might be able to do stuff, but it's taken away from other things. So if you can afford to contract it out to somebody else that does it as a living and does it well, then do that, and you will see your business catapult, to the next level because you have time to do something else.
Yes.
And one other question is, what advice would you tell somebody that wants to start their own PR business that obviously hasn't yet? Maybe even somebody that's either just maybe starting college or out of college, or maybe not even going to college. What do they need to do in order to
That's a great question. And I'm asked that one a lot. I always go back to the writing for sure. I also like to explain to people who want to be in PR, and I think anyone kind of needs to understand this. PR doesn't have the greatest reputation, unfortunately, kind of like sometimes influencers don't. But people tend to think that PR people are, publicists, and all we do is go to parties and stuff. And people that live in LA and New York might do a lot of that. If you live in the middle of the country, you're not doing a lot of that. You're doing a lot of working and writing and sitting at your desk. So yes, there are times when you look at my social feed and people are like, oh my gosh, she gets to do the most fun things. Well, I have really fun clients, and I have structured my business around representing really cool clients. Again, Shelby County tourism spots, different fashion boutiques. So yeah, I do have a great time, and that's super important to me. But I always like people to understand that behind that, there's a whole lot of work that went into that. And also, while I'm at these events and it looks like, it's just happy, I'm working. I'm pitching, that sort of thing. So people, I feel, need to understand that PR is more work than they may think it is. And also with PR, it's not something that I would ever recommend opening your own business as soon as you got out of college at all. I mean, I really don't recommend that for anyone unless you went to a trade school. And so you have a specific trade to go into. But PR is so much about relationships and who you know and who you've worked with over the years. And it's about building trust. And I still work with reporters and editors and stuff that I worked with back in 2001, which is when I started doing PR. And we have continued to have a relationship. And it takes a while to build that. So whenever I left to start my own firm, I wanted to make sure that not only did I have enough media connections, but I wanted to make sure that also I had enough people that I could call and try to get their business. So you need to have not only, that reputation and be trusted with journalists, but you also need to have a bank of people that you're like, hey, I'm starting this. Would you ever consider hiring me?
Right. Good connections. And then one more thing is what tips and tricks could you give somebody, like a tip or two that, like I said, may not have the budget for PR, but they're just starting out. So what one tip would you tell them?
That's, again, you have such good questions. Everyone that you know should know about your business. So your social circles, your friends, your family members, again, put it on social, and, offer to speak for like women's groups and all those things. And obviously now you're not going to be speaking in person. You're going to be doing it virtually, which makes it even easier for you to do that. Again, that's going to take time, but that gets your name out there. Again, the junior leagues, the younger women's clubs, all those groups, they all use speakers, the chamber. So offer up to do that. And then also, again, just that connecting with your community. There's a boutique here in Louisville called Awakenings Boutique, and I was fortunate enough to work with them. And the owner is a cancer survivor. Mm-hmm. And Awakenings has amazing wigs, for women who have lost their hair. And then it just has things that you would need if you're going through cancer treatment. So it's a very, very specific group. But Heidi, the owner, knows that's her niche. And so she really sticks with that niche, and she doesn't have to go outside of it. So she partners with hospitals that have cancer centers. She speaks at Gilda's Club and all those places. So she knows who she needs to reach, and she has figured out how to do it. So that leads me to another thing that I should have said earlier, because it's super important. You really shouldn't try to be everything to everyone. When I started my firm, I did a little bit of that. And one, it's exhausting. And then two, you will fail some, because when you're working with people that are not really in your niche, it may not be successful. So that means you're going to be upset, and they're going to be upset. Mm-hmm. And I have sometimes represented clients that just weren't a fit for what I do and the journalists that I know, and just my way of thinking and that sort of thing. And it didn't work. So I always, this is across the board for any job, lawyers, whatever, know who you want to work with and go after those people.
That's such good advice. And I think people, when they start things, they have this grand plan, but they don't see the steps in between to get to the grand plan. And then they sometimes not necessarily fail, but they get burnt out. So,
right. Yes.
So yeah, work with the people you want to work with, start with them, start with who you know, and then kind of grow from there. So Debra, where can we find you?
Well, thank you for asking. I have a new website that I love. It's DebraLockerGroup.com. And I'd love for you to check it out. And then I'm on social at Debra Locker Group for my business. And then it's Debra Locker Griffin for all my personal stuff. You don't have to look at the personal unless you want to see really cute dogs and my cute son.
And they are cute. Her dogs are cute. And Debra, I didn't tell you, I did get a dog. I'll have to send you a picture of her.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, thank you for being on here. This has been awesome. And thanks everybody for joining us. We will put Debra's information up so that you can find her if you need some PR in your life, because everybody needs some PR in their life. Mm-hmm. And Debra would love to work with some new people. And yes, thank you for joining the SOCIALpreneur podcast. Make sure you are liking and following and sharing, and make sure you go check out Debra's social media page too, and give her a like or a follow as well. And let me know who you want to see next. I plan to have a couple other people, some other influencers. I plan on having an SEO specialist and some other people on here, but I want to know what you want, what kind of tips and tricks and branding and all of the above that you want. So join us next time for episode 3.